which is to create space for the voices of Africa's educators, learners, communities, anybody who is passionate about education in Africa to be seen, heard, and loved. And so what we really first and foremost wanting to do is create a space of belonging where we can connect, where we can learn about each other's work, where we can share what our lived experience is, not from a position of expertise, but from a position really of wanting to develop deep insight and connection and relationship with each other. And out of that, hoping that really some beautiful things may come, but also that we can inspire each other and encourage each other and care for each other in the places where we are doing our work. And today's session is a little bit of an art flow of that space that we've been holding for the past 3 years. So I'm going to ask Andrew if he can just introduce today's session particularly for us, what it's about. And Andrew, handing over to you, and we'll let you know if your signal doesn't hold up well, and then you'll just have to, unfortunately, pop your video off. But for the meantime, let's hear from you.
Thank you so much, Robin. I hope you can hear me well, everyone.
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. I was listening different insights. I was listening insights from different members when Roxana talks about our interest in African research. Silvana talks about building communities of learners, and Sheila talks about her work in Raleigh. And what was going through my mind was this term research, because many times the moment we hear the term research, we tend to shy off. We tend to think that we know nothing, not knowing that every day is about research. Even right now, by observing me, watching me, listening to me, and listening to each and every one of us, we are really doing research. The reason as to why Africa Voices Dialogue came about was because we wanted to Africanize our education system, considering that most of the research is borrowed outside the continent. So the thing was, how can we bring together African voices? How can we consider African voices in our education, the research, in our education policy, in our education, in our African practice? So we are quite excited and delighted to be with you, all of you. Feel welcome. Don't shy off when you are sharing your insights. We value your thoughts, we value your thinking, we value your beliefs, because we know that together we can do a lot. All of us are exploring. All of us are exploring. Whether experienced, whether novice, we can hold each other's hand, considering that a chain is they say a chain is as strong as its weakest link. So we believe that together we can get stronger, together we can bring our ideas together, and together we can bring our thoughts together so that we can inform research, we can inform practice, we can inform policy in the African context. And greetings to those who are joining from outside the continent, Niall, Savannah, and the rest. They have been our valuable members. And those who are joining today, the likes of Sheila and the rest, we really, really appreciate your participation. We really appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to starting this journey together. Feel appreciated, explore as much as you can. And I know that a lot together we shall do a lot. So as Robin is sharing here, the establishment of this research tank signifies a collective commitment, and underline the term collective commitment, not individualized commitment, but a collective commitment to advancing educational research and practice in Africa. And we firmly believe that by convening African researchers and fostering collaborative research interest groups, we can pave way for transformative change, grounded theories, and impactful research that emanates from the African context. Underline again grounded theories, because grounded theories comes from stories, comes from our worldviews, comes from our thoughts, So our aim is to break away from traditional research paradigms that often overlook African voices and experiences, and instead cultivate a research ecosystem that celebrates and amplifies the African perspective that is deeply collaborative, and then again, deeply collaborative as opposed to superficial collaboration, and celebrates the lived African perspective and all of its rich potential. And align again, lived African perspective, because what we want to do is we want to contextualize our research. Many times we have technically dependent on research outside the continent, but right now we want this research to inform our policy, research, and practice. We shall be so much proud of ourselves when we shall be reciting Africa knows us, Uganda knows us, Ethiopia knows us, Morocco knows us, South Africa knows us, Kenya knows us. Because I mean, all voices matter. All voices matter. So we intend to empower Africa voices. We intend to support African education innovation and best practices. We intend to have a community engagement and agency. We intend to create a strong research to practice and practice to research feedback loops. We tend to have Afrocentric knowledge generation as opposed to conventional methods. We intend to have a research collaboration. We intend to have a capacity building that is become better every day. We believe in continuous improvement. We intend to have a knowledge dissemination. I remember when Robin was starting the session, she talked about publishing books, publishing journals. How can these journals and books inform our teaching and learning? We intend to have research which can influence policy. We intend to inform the global narrative and facilitate international collaboration. And of course, you can see that beautiful map of Africa there. That is the brain. You see, if you look at that map very clearly, you'll see it depicts the way our brain looks like, our head looks like. So we needed to be to use our African narrative to really inform our research.
Oh, I love that. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, it's beautiful.
Wonderful. All right. So thank you, everybody. It is a small group here today. We really didn't publicize because we wanted to encourage those who are very keen on this topic to come into a small, relatively intimate thinking space together. And so we're really hoping for a lot of dialogue and conversation, and we'd love to hear your input. We also are cognizant that there are people who were in the first session, that was the first think tank session, that aren't able to make this session. And so although there's us in the room, we do have a consciousness and awareness of the others who are also eager to participate and contribute to this conversation. And the other thing that we just do want to highlight as well is that while we believe there is a real dearth of Afrocentric networks for research, there certainly are some. And so, what we're hoping to do is to contribute to this Afrocentric research paradigm, and we're hoping to do it in a very specific way. And in a way, the way that this network has emerged is demonstrative of what we really would love to see it become, which is that it's a network that emerges out of connection, because of connection, and that really emerges from grassroots conversations upwards, and has built into it right from the very outset a completely collaborative, co-creative way of designing what we do, how we do it, where we do it, when we do it, what topics we look at, and yet is supported by this commitment to collectivism and to being in relationship with each other. There are quite a number of other research networks which are very exciting to see, and we do hope to build increasing level of relationship with them. But I do think that many have emerged really from the research space initially, rather than upwards from the bottom. So it's an experiment. We hope that it works. And there is something about just consistently moving forward and moving forward together that results in magic happening. And so we look forward to seeing what magic may happen. We have some remarkable members as well. Yes, Andrew.
And Robin, just to add on what you have said, just to inform the members, this is one of the hubs. We have several networks. So Research Hub is going to be an additional network, which we are starting today. We have a equity network. We have a peace building network. We have a parental empowerment network. We have a food security network. And now this one is a research hub network. So you can see when we were starting Africa Voices Dialogue 3 years ago, Robin, Abdelaziz, and I, we were just exploring. We never knew that at the end of the day, we shall have all these kind of networks. But again, we developed another theme, let 100 flowers bloom, let 100 flowers blossom. And at the end of the day, today we are gathering with a lot of interest in creating this network. And again, we are going again to follow that principle, let 1,000 flowers bloom, as we launch this research hub. All what is needed is for us to be how to be flexible as much as possible, and to be open as much as possible, and to explore as much as we can. And at the end of the day, we shall be called researchers.
Thank you, Andrew. Yeah. So what I would love to do very quickly is we're going to go through 3 phases really in today's workshop. So we're going to look at what was it that emerged out of the last think tank session and out of our conversations and many kind of engagements around what would it mean to have a research education network specifically by African researchers wherever in the research realm they find themselves, on Africa, for Africa, and with a hugely respectful approach to Afrocentric experience. And so we'd like to just really recap on that, tell you what we've done so far. We've created a little kind of initial pilot team to help us take the first few steps, bounce off you what we think a potential trajectory could be, and then really stop there and ask for reflection, engagement, thinking together about where can we go, how might we move, what have we got appetite for, and then very importantly, what are the next practical steps that we are keen to take and that we could take together. This kind of project can often feel very overwhelming. And so I think having the big picture, but then being able to kind of really quantify into what steps and what is the next step is very helpful. So just to consider, so what is in our hands? So with those who've indicated from the last session and from this session and from other conversations that we've been part of, we have at least 80 interested participant researchers, and they vary in experience quite widely. So everywhere from, and this, by the way, is the data from the last session, because the data from this session is very, very fresh, and we actually had RSVP still coming in until about 15 minutes ago. So we will collate these to really look at what we have in our hands with an even more refined lens. But what we have is, I think, a very, very exciting mix. So we have a large percentage of research novices, early stage career researchers, people who are interested in research, who are keen to practice it, maybe who are practitioner researchers. We have quite a number of emerging researchers, so people who have some research experience and who are keen to really grow and build that research experience. We've got a number of established researchers, and then again, in this session, we have quite a number of people in today's session who really have significant research experience, and we have a number of research supervisors as well. Then Jill, and you are not the only person, we also have some people in our mix who have huge network experience in the research space, who are really excellent at the connection of grant funding and potential research projects, and various levels of research interest. And so I think we've got a fantastic mix to start with. We've got a very nice representation across the continent. I think because Africa Voices Dialogue has been doing quite a lot of network and research-orientated work with Really, who've been partners with us for a year in the Parental Empowerment and Engagement series. We have quite a representation from East Africa, but we also have good, solid West African, North African and South African representation. Again, this data is from last session, so we have additional North and South African representation in today's session. And we have 7 individuals who've indicated they have a really strong global interest or continent-wide interest in research, as well as 4 who have indicated that from a global perspective, they really are keen and interested to support this research objective within the global research realm. And then the other thing that we have is we have a substantive number of partnerships with network organizations. And so, you know, Africa Voices Dialogue has this possibility of really convening different networks of interest, networks of research, both around and beyond the continent. That is quite exciting. The kinds of interests that people have expressed in why they would want to be part of this kind of research hub vary from, you know, really just a collaborative thinking space. So having people with whom you can work. I know, Jill, you have a huge interest in establishing a writing group to support those who are working on their independent research, but would really love to be able to do that with thinking partners and to bounce things off people and to have the support of making their way through that awful, lonely process of a year's worth of data management, etc. So, you know, from that sort of level of support and thinking partnership to people looking for partners to work on actual pieces of research together, people who are keen to explore topics of interest and maybe bring their different perspectives and create a sort of coalition of research, support with others who are in the research world and people who can support and mentor them through the research space, and then connection into grants, funding, support, mentorship support, etc., as well as with data resources. And then there again is this huge interest in what we might be able to do together around training, mentorship, and capacity building. Again, just broken down slightly differently, we have about half of the people who've expressed interest who are already actively involved in research projects. And the other thing that we hope to be able to do is to actively amplify that research. So wherever the research has come from for this Africa Voices Dialogues platform, to be able to, with an attitude of generous support, profile and highlight each other's work, share it, look for the connections where we can land it into other spaces that might be interested. And then we have quite a lot of people who both have data and are looking for support for a way to convert that data into something meaningful, and those who don't have an active research project but would love to support an active research project. And then lastly, there are 2 slides on this. So we've got quite a lot of information about where people's interest lies. So for this group, what actually are the thematic things that we're most interested in? Very high level of interest in education leadership. Again, probably because of the Parental Empowerment and Engagement series that we did, a high level of interest in parental and community empowerment. Learning ecosystems, learning communities, professional learning communities, learning networks, whatever it might be, collaborative networks. And then well-being, again, a lot of interest in the well-being space, which is a global interest. And I think I always feel particularly excited because I think Africa has a huge amount to contribute to the concept of well-being in learning, really bringing exactly what we're trying to do here. How do we create communities of care and belonging? Because there is no better way to attend to a sense of well-being and how do we diffuse those into our systems so that all of our learning is actually happening in spaces where we are supported, loved, cared for, seen as human beings. And then we have a lot of interest around our other, research hub, at least our other interest group hubs. Okay, just a different way of looking at it. So there's interest also in innovation in teaching, inclusion in education and social justice, ethics and social justice in education, mindset, critical thinking and AI, environmental and ocean education, and again, the healing-centered and well-being approaches. So these were from two slightly different data sets, but you can see that there is, a lot of coherence around the things that we are interested in looking at together for the moment. Okay. All right, and then lastly, and I'll really whiz through this, just what opportunities. So what specifically now do we see as this is what collaboration could offer us, as this is what we're very keen to collaborate on. So first and foremost, huge interest in just improving our capacity for collaborative research, for improving our capacity to share knowledge so that it doesn't get locked away in dusty journals or bookshelves or university archives, but actually is breathed life into and becomes relevant and can be practiced and can be shared, and engagement with that research. So comments such as exploring how different research relates to each other, promoting collaboration in research systems, strengthening collaboration and knowledge sharing across the spectrum, so almost getting out of the research bucket and seeing how we can spread that into practice, policy, decision-making, finding new ways to bring really communal and familial engagement, and making research discoverable. Then there has been interest as well in really looking at what does inclusion in education and machine learning mean for us. There's a lot of interest in the intersectorality of health and education, and looking at how those meet with each other. And then along the same lines, there's a tremendous amount of interest in broader societal issues. So really in our South African context, we have a program, or the SADC region actually, called Care and Support for Teaching and Learning, which is really what are the surround societal issues that impact on education? How do they engage with each other, and how can we really become intentional about working with those? Okay, so those are the kind of comments made in that regard. So I think that I can nearly stop now. Oh, sorry. Maybe let me just stop for a moment and let's do a quick think back into the space around what we've heard, any thoughts, any comments, anything that we've left out and you'd love to add, or what excites you. So just pop your hands up and shout.
Or Robin also, maybe they can also tell us their expectations. Those who are going to contribute to share the insights, they can also tell us the expectations of this hub. Maybe by the end of the day, by the end of the month, by the end of the year, by the end of maybe 5 years, what are we expecting to have achieved?
Okay, so
Roxana,
maybe, yeah, let's ask Roxana and Tiff.
Okay, thanks. I have several questions, and I don't know where to start, with what order, but I think it's a lot more around, if I can just give you a quick maybe overview of the questions that will lead up to. It's really about how do we structure ourselves. So we've had the first one and the second one now, and we are introducing ourselves, but I think it's like, so how do we structure the processes going forward, so that we can have a strategy and we can have maybe even mini hubs within the research component, because research in itself is so wide. And maybe we can just talk around that. I mean, there are several ideas, but maybe I think that's where I should just leave it for now and see if there's similar queries, questions around what I'm proposing. And it could be one of the things that we can talk about before we close today. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we'll share a little bit about what we've thought, but that's exactly what we're here for, to say, this is what we've thought. What do you guys think? And also to take it to a practical next step. So, Atef.
Yes, hello everyone. Yeah, so happy to join you today. Well, Robin, yeah, I think that you presented a holistic approach of what is in our hands. Yeah. And I think we can add many elements related to what will happen in the upcoming month or upcoming days. That is related to the priorities of the research in Africa. So we have to ask ourselves, what are the priorities of the research in Africa? When we talk about, just teaching and learning, or there's critical issues and we should deal with and address it in our research. For example, employment. And I'm talking about employment because actually, from my knowledge, I know this is a very critical issue in Africa and resulted a lot of phenomena like immigration from Africa to other countries, and how we can, save, a good or prestigious jobs for the African youth in Africa. That is very important here. So that means that we have to think about, technical education, vocational training in education sector. Yeah. One more thing, that, the priorities that all, research, whatever it's educational or related to the community, must be related to one sector. That is the development sector. So how we can integrate, the research to the development in Africa? I mean, the economy, the community development, it's very important, yeah. Let me tell you something here, because actually I worked in the research field for a while. Yeah, one of my colleagues asked me, what is the aim of the educational research here? And it's my answers, yeah, it's maybe it's different here, but it's we are making decisions here. We are trying to help the decision makers to and influence the policies in our countries to take that decisions here. So how can our research be a tool for the decision making in Africa? That is very important. Last one, Africa is a big continent. It's more than 50 countries. So when we take, the holistic approach of the educational research just for Africa as one, or we have regions and priorities for the regions. What I mean that we have North Africa, we have, Central Africa, we have, East Africa, West Africa, and Southern Africa. That means that it's very important that we have to make the research based on the region itself, dealing with and addressing, the issues in these regions. Yeah, that's related to the demographic. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
What brilliant, brilliant comments from both of you. Thank you, thank you. And I think particularly one thing that as we work together over time is extremely important will be for us as a collective to articulate what is for us the aim of education research. Because I think when you have that piece, like why do we do what we do? Why do we want to do this? A lot of other things, then we reflect back onto that and check, does it meet that objective that we have as a collective? Anybody else that would like to make a comment quickly before we move on to looking at really what have we done since our last meeting? Andre.
Good afternoon, Robin. Thank you for sharing on LinkedIn this event. My attention to Robin is what brought me here. I've known Robin not very long, but we've met in circles in the education space. And the curiosity that brought me here today is prosperity, because I've been doing some work on the building blocks of prosperity, and education and health, I'm glad to see on your radar, but really to improve living conditions and help people really make their natural living environments better able to support them so that we can build inclusive societies. So I'm coming at it from an empowered people perspective. I'm trying to figure out, how does your research bring data and insight into how we make empowered people partake in inclusive societies and create these inclusive societies, looking at safety, looking at personal freedom, governance, and bringing about social and cultural capital so that that asset might yield a dividend in those inclusive economies and spark the type of open economics that we're hoping to see in the world. Specifically, we've seen this investment environment in Africa, which is, where people come and extract, but we're looking now to say, how does your research help point people in the direction of not extractive, but contributive open economics? So I'm looking to see how your research might yield better economic quality, possibly impact on infrastructure and market access, and create enterprise conditions. So, this is for me, my curiosity. I run a business called Business Transformation Design. I changed the name from Business Education Design because I think that education, beautiful thing, but unless it's having massive transformative impact, maybe we should shut it down. It must have transformative impact. So that's my interest. And I think it was Atif that spoke. He sparked an idea in my mind to go, how are you connecting the dots to create prosperity across the continent? I'm interested in that. I'm a scholar trying to figure out prosperity. Thank you.
That is brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. Elizabeth, and then I tell you, I'll just give you a heads up, Mohammed, because I'm really happy to see you here, and just to ask if you might also just be able to add your thoughts. So Elizabeth.
Thank you so much, Robin. I'm trying to put on my video. Sorry, I came in slightly late, so I wasn't able to introduce myself. I'm coming from Global Schools and Communities Initiative, GESI, and in the capacity of education specialist, I've been rather a consumer of research practitioner. And I work along with researchers, then go and consume what has been done. And along the way, it's appearing like research is now looking into education systems. How do we innovate education systems irrespective of locality or locations or regions? Because some of our learners, our students, are living in marginalized zones or crisis environments of learning. And so even when we practice the innovations that we think should bring transformative learning, it appears like the transformative learning is not really realized according to expectations. And so so the wind is going direction of how do we innovate, let's say, pre-primary basic education, or a primary school basic education, or a secondary school basic education. I'm talking of education because now that's where I belong. How do we innovate it such a way that when it's delivered, it may bring about the transformative learning that we are looking for. So maybe as we think about this research, we could be thinking about the systems that are the umbrella of what we need to see. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Elizabeth. Mohammed, I don't know if you would like to maybe just jump on and let us know what you also would hope for and expect from the space.
I can't really hear you. Can you repeat?
I was just going to ask, would you be happy to share with us what you would like to see from this research hub?
Obviously, as a student in Morocco, which is an African country, I would love to have sort of solutions to the problems that, as a student, we may face in the education system. Like for a while, I'm talking now, for the moment, I must have a class for education, but for some problems, I'm not. Because there is a few more problems in our education system. So I just think that this research could help us to really found something going to help us as students in our African countries.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so if you have any additional thoughts, if you would like to just pop them into the chat as well, so that we can really try and glean as much richness around what we should collectively be focusing on, and then mirror it back to ourselves. It's very, very valuable to have every one of our voices speaking about what we hope for and what we expect.
Robin?
Yes, Aziz.
Don't mind, I'll just make a very quick comment. I think I would like to just say thank you to everyone who has shared ideas through questions, and I think we are on the right track, because when we're thinking of research starts with a question, and everybody who has talked has shared a question, and I think the lucky ones are going to be people who are probably willing to start doing research in education in Africa. They have many ideas to choose from, and I think this is the very essence of this research hub, as a beginning, convening people through the continent, and also people outside the continent who are interested in the question of education in Africa. And I think that raising those questions shows how important first education is. It also shows how complex it is, how complex research in education it is. And I think that I would like to underline this. It has become a very complex issue, because education now is intertwined with almost every single field in our lives. And at the same time, I would like to say a few words, one word about your presence. Why we convened people to this hub, because we believe, we value the experiences you've had, we value the expertise you have, we value the education we've had, and it's also because of something that we haven't yet talked about in our introduction, which has to do with the methodologies and the methods. We also wish to convene people around using non-traditional methods in doing research. And that's what we've been doing in Africa Voices Dialogue. Our approach has been very innovative, very non-traditional. So we've seen many methods that have been used. And I think that's why now people ask those questions like, why is research in education important? Why should we do research in education? And I think that Atef, when he shared the question, he shared the rhetorical question that people ask nowadays, because people have become bored of doing research, because they ask the question, what does it serve? What does this research serve? And Andre said something very interesting. He said, if research doesn't serve prosperity, if education doesn't serve prosperity, then it's not really interesting. But I think it is also important to probably flip the coin and ask the question, does prosperity serve education? So that's another question we may ask and we may do research about. So does prosperity that is taking place in Africa and around Africa, and we know that prosperity now moves from Africa to go elsewhere. A lot of prosperity moves from Africa. Africa is the root of prosperity, and prosperity goes and reaches continents beyond Africa. Does that prosperity also serve education? And I think this is the right question to ask, besides your question, Andre. And I just would like to say one more sentence. We are thinking of Africa Voice Dialogue as the seed. So what we are doing now through this research hub is implementing a seed. That's what we're doing. So the question about whether this hub can lead to many hubs. We are implementing a seed, yes, in order to think about research in Africa in education differently, try to challenge the status quo when it comes to doing research in Africa. And at the same time, because we value your expertise, we value your knowledge, we value whatever you might come up with. So through amplifying the voices of our African partners and every stakeholders who are working for Africa or interested in promoting education in Africa. So we are going to, Africa Voices Dialogue is going to be the ground and is going to provide the soil and the seeds, and the tree and the branches of that tree can reach wider. And I think that's kind of something that comments on what Roskana has said. So that's why we are here. We probably have talked a lot, Robin, Andrew, and I today, but I think we'll open the discussion later. And as I said, we have the seed in our hands. We want you to put hands in hands together with us, throw that seed in the African soil, and help it grow. That's why we convened here today. Thank you.
How beautiful. Thank you very much, Aziz. Always such an incredibly poetic way of articulating hopes and dreams. Thank you. So I'll speed through very quickly just to answer some of the questions, Ruxana, and that it is a first bash answer. It's not a that's how it's going to be answer. It's kind of, in order to start moving, you have to start moving. Once we're moving, it's easier to change direction if we need to. But just what we've done so far. So I don't know how I've done this. I think I've let me just escape myself and go back here and see where I am, because I'm in the wrong spot. Okay. No, I'm not. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So what we have done so far, we've established a core planning team. It's literally, how do we get moving? Let's pull in a few people that we know we don't have the skills in, Aziz, Andrew, and I. And so in that core planning team have been the three of us and a couple of people who really put up their hand and said, we're really keen to start moving with you. So Jill, Sue, Marianne, and Ruxana, thank you so much for really stepping up into that space, and we look forward to moving into planning with a greater group as time goes by. We've developed a bit of a project plan. It's a tentative project plan for trying, so it's experimental, and we want to see how we need to move. But to start somewhere, we have developed what we think might be a useful project plan and process. We've put through 2 grant proposals since our last meeting. So we've submitted a grant proposal with Jessie to KICS on a specific project focus. And we've submitted a grant proposal to the Spencer Foundation, really for the establishment of the hub. We do know that, well, what we do want to do is submit quite a few additional grant proposals. So if anybody has ideas around what and where might support this kind of work, we'd love to hear from you. And then we've initiated some early research collaboratives. So since inception, we have been really doing research, and we've done research with a few different partners, and there is a lot of research that has emerged out of this collective already. So we are not starting from ground zero. We actually have a lot of expertise in the room. What we are keen to do is grow this and really innovate together. I'm not going to go into detail. It is in the letter that we shared with you in the invitation. So this is a little bit of what we've envisaged around how this might look. This is a linear version. I'm not a linear person, but it's for the linear people, maybe a bit easier to see. So an organizing team, specific research teams, both around potentially geographic research areas and interest group areas, making sure that we actively grow an audience for the research and we reach out and connect with and make the right kinds of connections, making sure that we have from low entry initial ability to publish and create space for research to be seen all the way through to building the networks with substantive research publishing entities. And then we know we need to do quite a lot of work around resourcing this work. So both resourcing the hub and resourcing specific grant pieces, at least research pieces. We think that it would be helpful to have think tank directors, quite a few. So Aziz is keen to sort of hold that role. Andrew will also hold a little bit of the role, and probably other community members. So likely, Ruxana, I would think this might be something that might interest you. We need editorial and strategic publication management, and we need resource mobilization. So we need sort of, we feel, 3 teams, plus very importantly, a team that can support whatever hubs do develop. So whatever seeds move out of this space, we would like to make sure that we provide enough support to allow them to grow and thrive until they may or they may not develop enough gravitas in their own right to be able to write proposals, get grants, etc. And then this is, again, it's in the document that we shared with you. So where we sort of feel that over the next period, we may need to move. So we write at the very early planning phases with the staff. Today, we really want to connect with everybody to hear, what do you feel? Refine the plan that we have, kick off some first step practical issues, and then really do a lot of the pragmatic things, but also the long-term strategic things that we need to do. We do have a big vision, which we've broken down into smaller steps. We may be missing some steps. We'll find out as we go along. I'm not going to talk too much about that. So just in terms of the first phase, that first star on the slide before, what we feel that we've done to date is to conceptualize this idea, engage our Africa Voices dialogue and greater community to assess if people are interested, set up a baseline planning team, develop a little bit of a framework. We are actively assessing grant opportunities and seeking initial funding. And today where we are is really the opportunity to check in, to get feedback, to check on appetite, and to see where we go to next from here. So that's me done. I'm going to hand over to Aziz because he's going to move us into much more of a conversational space. But just a reminder as we step into thinking again together, that what we really want to think about is sense making for next steps, but with an attitude of open heart, open mind, open will. So anything that gets suggested is welcome. We listen to each other with respect. We have a sense of incredible possibility, and we don't feel that by taking a next particular step, we cut out future possibility, but we do realize that a next particular step helps to keep us moving. So Aziz, if I can hand over to you and just, ask you to lead us in this discussion.
Yes, Robin, I'm here. Thank you so much. Well, I think that the discussion has already, unfolded with those questions we've heard from everyone. I probably need to say one thing about the questions that we have heard, besides what I have said, is that we know that it's very, very hard to have answers to these questions, and nobody has answers to those questions that you have asked. Those are questions, as I said, that can be probably developed into research projects and can help us discover and build knowledge, as Niam said. But the discussion that we want to have, an open discussion that we want to have today, is not really restricted to the questions we're going to ask. I don't know if you've stopped sharing, Robin, but we have 2 questions around which we want to start the discussion in this room. And as you see, so what do you see, sense, feel? That's why I said that the discussion has already unfolded with those questions. We may go on discussing in the same way, but what we also want to hear is, what is your freshest thinking about doing research in Africa? If you are doing, we don't know if you are already doing research or not, if you have done research or not. But what I see, this is our vision, is that research is not limited, and we have said it when we started Africa Voices Dialogue, when we said that thinking about education in Africa is not limited to scholars, it's not limited to academicians. It's everybody's issue, and everybody has something to say about it. And sometimes we gain a lot of knowledge from the people who are experiencing education in the ground than from the people who are doing the research, or they are sometimes, some of whom are in their ivory tower and theorizing about a world that they know very little about. So this is it. So I'll just open the discussion right now. You're free to share your perspectives based probably on the question, but at the same time, as I said before, we hope we have a lot of aspirations. Some of the aspirations we have for Africa Voices Dialogue Research Hub is to create communities of practice and interest groups who are willing to do something together, either write research articles, do research, find ways to impact policymaking, find ways to probably portray what is done in Africa and how it should be done, and so on and so forth. So we have many aspirations that we can share later. So the floor is yours, and we have to just keep quiet. Robin, don't you think so? And listen to all of you are here. That's why we invited you.
Absolutely. And if nobody kicks off immediately, I'd love to ask Jill and Marianne as well, and Sue, what your feelings are. But Adam, I see your hand is up.
Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here with you today. Thank you very much, Abdelaziz, for the invitation. So, sorry, I have joined late. So I think this is a very optimistic and very enthusiastic initiative, but it's very feasible. Okay, so this is very interesting. So I'm a Professor Adam Shetty. I'm a researcher in public health and occupational health. So I'm doing research in health and well-being among students and workers. We are trying to investigate the relation between health, well-being, career, education, success, and different aspects of what I have mentioned. I would be very happy to collaborate with you. Okay, so I am a member of different research teams in Morocco. I'm leading a research organization here specialized in health and well-being, and I would be so very happy to share with you informations or maybe some leads to how we can look for fundings. So some initial funders that just came to my mind. That could be, for example, the European Union is funding a lot of projects that are related to the education and all you have mentioned earlier. That could be, for example, the Erasmus program, the CBHE, the capacity building in education programs. That could be the COST project. If you know the COST project in Europe, they are funding much projects in Africa. We just applied for a project where we try to investigate the impact of the student well-being and the career of students throughout their whole career with different aspects. So that could be very interesting. So you already have you know,
Oops, sorry, you pressed mute again, so we can't hear you right now. There we go.
so I said, so you already have the network, so it's I think it's feasible to just put up some ideas and try to work on different proposals we can submit for different vendors. But it's very feasible, yes. So, yeah, and I would be very happy to collaborate.
Fantastic, that's great, Adam. Jill, can I ask you just for a quick reflection from you, and then anybody else, please put your hands up. Let's just move into thoughts.
Thanks, Ron. I'll be very quick. I think what gives me most hope and optimism about this space is it's kind of it's a counterforce to the current ways of working in such sort of separation, where we each think our ideas are right and our ideas are reflective of reality. And I think it's both where challenge and opportunity collide, just in figuring out how do we strengthen and support one another, and at the same time amplify voices whose voice gets amplified. But it's for me, a really interesting dynamic and a challenging mind shifts to take on, because we all have different theories of change and different ways of doing it. So I'm very excited about the possibilities that throws up. And I will pass on to Marianne or Sue or whoever would like to contribute.
Yes, I'm happy to contribute. I think from a practical point of view, when it was mentioned about structures and next steps, I think it would be important to actually group those people who we know with the sort of level of research they're in, we know the topics of interest, but to start identifying those people by name and starting to actually start working with them or putting them in teams or analyzing those people. I think that from a practical point of view, that would be next step, as to get the kind of strategy going and to get movement towards the objectives. And I don't know how much, what everybody else thinks about that, but in terms of timing, but I would think that would be next step. And then also looking at, I know you've got a lot of existing research, but what are the main topics? What is the most pressing ones that need attention, and then how to go about that?
Thanks, Sue. I think I'm here more in a listening posture today. I think just and curiosity, listening and being curious. I think where I come in is a little bit later in packaging what's helping to package what's been researched, and in a way that's palatable for as many people as possible. I'm quite interested in sort of research that, perhaps audiovisual research or research that isn't necessarily strictly academic, trying to sort of, present, to feed that back to various bodies, as in a story form, obviously truthful. But so at the moment, I'm going to be quite quiet because I'm just in a listening posture today.
Yes, I'm also a bit in a listening posture, so I do hope I haven't jumped the gun with my suggestion.
Oh, that's awesome. Any other freshest thinking? So anything that really you feeling you want to say, just pop your hand up and Neil.
Have Neil, Robin.
Well, I'm Neil. Neil, and I'm in the north of Scotland. I'm actually English. I grew up in the south of England. This year, I worked for a research consultancy for many years as well. So lots of things have come together, and I've been involved in Africa Voices, and I've been involved in the International Congress of School Effectiveness. I'm going to go to hopefully, my 14th in a row. But the point that I want to make here is that I would say the big job of my life was being a school principal of a small little school in remote Scotland. But because of where we are, it almost, I feel, has a sort of Ubuntu philosophy. It was out of the mainstream. I live out of the mainstream in a place with deep communitarian values. And we've had a fantastic curriculum reform in Scotland, but it came up against what I'd call managerialism. And there's words that are around performativity, learnification, datification. And I'm also, having been an experienced researcher, I became the accidental school principal. In other words, I went back in as a substitute teacher and found I really liked it. It was so refreshing and so different from research that I involved myself in the practicalities of living in a little remote community. And slowly, I became a school principal. Then we had to do formal planning, formal development planning, and then we were asked to implement and develop policies of the government. But then we had the most brilliant one of all, which I'm presenting on in Dublin in January with Silvana. Actually, it was called Building the Curriculum, and it lasted for 5 years, and actually it was more like 10 to 15. So the point I want to make to this community, because I'm not in Africa, but is to somehow look at the people who are actually doing the work and somehow look at their perspectives and how they're generating knowledge. And then it's actually a form of research, but it's not the sort of research that in the United Kingdom has become very silo-driven, and it's done to education. So I've actually had quite major tussles, really, how can I put it, trying to rethink how research engages with practitioners, policymakers, politicians. I'm actually in the 3P group of ICSE, politicians, policymakers, and practitioners. So that's why I'm involved. I've got something to contribute, but it's almost changing perspectives, very much along the lines of what we heard from Andrew and Robin and other speakers today. So I'll stay involved. Even I'm slightly looking in on Africa Voices, but I feel I'm in a place that's got sort of Ubuntu philosophy, which is why I'm so interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Oksana, I saw your hand was up and there were a few others. So Aziz, whoever you've seen.
Okay, I can go. I think with Niall's inputs, I almost forgot what I was going to say. It was just so interesting to hear him. Sorry about that. But I think following up from some of the brief inputs that we've had from Marianne and Sue and others, what's popping into my head is, and thinking about structure and way forward, is perhaps we can identify as a start the biggest challenges that we have right now in the education space. So if we start from the overview of maybe the deepest and most common challenges, and then filter down from that, because if we go with themes, we could end up right through the alphabets. And if we look at the major pain points, we can then start allocating people, resources, themes, research questions, collaborating, and all of that. So that would give you all the other aspects that we can then connect to. My thinking is that if we address it in that way, what we would like to do, I think, we have a wide network, and we have a brand, we have an identity through the Africa Voices Dialogue. We want to get to the other end, which is make the biggest impact in the shortest possible time. So if we look at the biggest pain points with the most effective impact, we can fill everything in between. That's just, yeah, where my head is going. Thanks.
Thank
And
you.
Rukshana, what would be the top 3 points of impact, just out of interest?
I think it would depend on the pain points. So if, for example, if I can give you something that's really, for me, something that's emerging, because of the pandemic and because we were in isolation, we have got the focus and the trust of technology. And we are forced to connect online, and the big advantage is that we can connect as widely as we can now with 54 provinces, 54 countries in Africa right now. And then also we're connecting with Canada in this meeting, and we connect. So the technology for me is, it's there, it's happening, it's big scale. And are we ready? Are our teachers ready? Are our children ready? How are we embracing it? What are we doing about it? So if I look at technology being advantage, disadvantage, but a huge challenge and a pain point, then the biggest impact that we would make is if we can, for example, ensure that everyone is empowered, create the agency, and shape the policies through our research on how best we can scale up the kind of frameworks that we're developing around technology for teachers in the classroom, for students. The other one that's popping up is, are we afraid of AI and, for example, ChatGPT, because a learner's inputs are not authentic because they are all pulled from the internet? Has that learning taken place? So there's many themes that will emerge, but I think the for me, if I'm using that as an example to answer your question, what is the biggest impact that we would make? So I think we would align that to the pain point that we would address. If we take 5 major pain points, then what is the impact we want when we address those pain points? Yeah.
Thank you. Murad.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. So I like just to add something. I think is the time that there is a collaboration between companies and researcher academic, because sometimes the academics do a good job, but in the end, sometimes the company, what the need of the company, there are a gap between them. And also, I think it's the time that there is collaboration between a lot of fields. For example, educator with the people who they do research, for example, in economic or in technology, for having this kind of measurement of the impact using technology and a lot of things, because now is the time to work hand to hand for having a better life. Thank you.
Thank you, Murad. Thanks a lot. I don't know if Muhammad has raised his hand, or Muhammad? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, for Miss Roxana, about the generated AI. For me, as an admin of the planning committee in one of my school clubs, I think generated AI does decrease the information that you will find in research. Like when you work with generated AI, there's so much information that will go away. Not like when you search for it. For example, like my last research was about Morocco and his international relations. When I worked with generated AI, I didn't find that spices information that when you search for it, like, but for generated AI in researches and education, is going to be very helpful if you just wanna a quick view about the subject, like not deep informations about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed. We probably want to look at the other questions we have on the other slide, Robin. If you can share again. And I think that we have already been talking to some of the questions, around some of the questions there, which is, I think, what are the issues that people want to coalesce around? What do you feel the top 3 important issues to focus our attention on are? And what opportunities do you see? What challenges are there? So we've probably heard a few ideas around these questions, but we are open to hear more around, about them.
Yeah, agreed. And so, I think if we do have any other topics, I've popped into the chat what I've been listening for and have heard, which is we've got 4 sort of thematic topics that have come up so far. And bearing in mind, like, there can be 500 topics, but let's just get a sense of, what is the stuff that, well, we think would be helpful to just kick off with. We can always change. It was my best comment my dad made to me: don't worry about what university degree you start. You can always change. And look where I am now. So what I've picked up is the 4 around from Adam. So health and well-being, which is really the wellness conversation. Then Deline, and you haven't spoken, but it'd be great if maybe you could speak to it now. A twofold piece around really justice and equity and the role of community. So I'm also passionate about that. So learning ecosystems, Ubuntu in education, how do we really foster space for belonging in education? From Ruxana, technology in education, and from Andre, education and thriving or prosperity. Are there any others that people feel like this is a very hot topic? And Michael, over to you. So,
okay, hello, long time not see. So I think very important topic is, especially with this now coming of artificial intelligence, not to forget about the roots. And one of the research topic could be how to transmit intangible heritage to young generation, and how to use also this new technology and AI to transmit that. And on the level of collaboration, we can collaborate with UNESCO. I would like to say that on the beginning of December in Botswana, there is a 20th anniversary conference of UNESCO connecting to intangible heritage. So you are all aware how Africa is rich on heritage, still intangible heritage. So we can also propose a research program about that topic and have a UNESCO maybe as a partner. So this is one thing. Also, what I propose is to like study about African thinking systems. We have very different in different parts of Africa, different system thinking, visual thinking. We have this topic called ethnomathematics, which study logical thinking out of European way of thinking. Yeah, so I think there are a lot of topics around also we can develop. And what is good and what I propose, because I represent small museum, but it's a European institution, that we can get access and grants from European Union to stimulate collaboration and research in between Europe and Africa. So having me in this group, I think we can collaborate also on this level, to access grants from European Union.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Robin?
Yeah, so Aziz, I don't know what you feel, but I think we've got about half an hour left until this session wraps up. Would it be helpful for us to maybe look at those different interest areas and see if people would like to break into rooms to discuss them and think about, okay, so what practical next step? And literally, what we are wanting to do is to co-create. So if we can think about what is a practical next step and be able to do it and feed that back into the whole, I think it's going to help us move a lot faster than kind of devolving all responsibility onto a couple, one or two or three people to make it happen. And so really keen to step into that process. Does that feel like it would be helpful if we set up a couple of breakaway rooms for people to chat together and think about what excites us, what ignites us, what do we think the next potential step might be, and what do we have appetite for?
Yes, of course. And I also think that we need to discuss some of the questions that I'm going to just say right now. What about everyone who is here? What roles do you see yourselves playing in the AVD Research Hub, and which spaces would you like to occupy? Because there are plenty of roles and plenty of spaces. So there is the role of the researcher. Are you here because you want to conduct research, or are you here for other things? We heard Adam, for example, talk about funding and finding funding resources. We know that people have different interests at the level of fields, but they also have different interests at the level of roles and the spaces they wanna take, or they wanna be in. So that's also one of the things we want to probably discuss if we go into breakaway rooms, Robin.
Yeah, perfect. So what I propose is maybe if anybody's keen to bring a topic that they're passionate about and they think, of the ones we've mentioned or a new one, put your hand up and say, I'd like to host this conversation. Who would like to join me? And whoever would like to join you can put their hands up, and either the technically not well organized me will just write your names down, and then when we open the groups, we'll divide the groups that way. So yeah, any pitches and proposals for topics for discussion in the breakaway rooms? Don't be shy, otherwise you'll get nominated with what I wrote down.
Yes, and Robin, you've been making a lot of cold calling now. You see, so you just we're waiting for people to raise hand. Otherwise, we're going to just cold call. That's what teachers do in classrooms, anyway. So, me, the teacher, I'm just used to cold calling people.
Okay, so I'm going to go because Robin's going to nominate me anyway, because she's written technology next to my name. So I'm happy to have a breakaway room with anyone who's interested to join me on the topic of technology and research. And there could be many other aspects related to that. It could be a teacher framework and capacity building of technology. It could be teaching in the classroom and technology. It could be policy development and technology. So I think just a broad stroke thing, and then we can unpack it. And if you want to be part of that cohort of people in a role or a responsibility in anything attached to that kind of research, I think cool, we can pull in together. Thanks.
Thank you.
You were going to do it anyway, Robin.
Yes, I was going to call you. So let's hear from maybe 3 or 4 people, and then what we'll do, once everybody knows what the topics are, then we can divide everybody up. So anybody else before I call?
I think that's one of the topics that was mentioned. It probably could be an umbrella term for discussion, is change, transformation, and systems. So related to what Andre and some of the people who have spoken said about how, for example, education might leverage change or might leverage transformation, and at the same time develop prosperity.
Fantastic. And the thing is here, so like with our hubs, what we've realized is all of these things are interconnected, in one way or another. So it's just like, where is the pinpoint of your interest wanting to sit at? They will all interconnect, which is why it's useful to have a hub, so we can see in each different space when we develop things that are similar and attached to each other. Cool.
We have practitioner-enabled research.
Okay. What I'm thinking, and Deline, you haven't spoken yet, but I'm wondering if you might be at all interested as well, because it relates to the practitioner-enabled research, but really thinking about learning ecosystems, learning networks, professional practice networks, Ubuntu. Would you be?
Sounds good to me, Robin, and I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I came in a little bit late and I've sort of been hanging here as a spider, just listening to everything and really enjoying it and imbibing it and really appreciating it. So I apologize if I was in that sort of zone. But I'm Delene Swanson. I'm from the University of Nottingham, but as you can hear from my accent, where I come from. And I love all the connections to soil and soul, and I really appreciate that. And I feel very strongly about the way in which I come from the soil of Africa. So Robin, I agree with you. I think that's a lovely idea. I think, you know, socio-ecological and indigenous perspectives, decolonial perspectives, those sorts of ways of being, alternative epistemologies, is important for us to think about in terms of Africa and African education. We have a tremendous strength. We have a lot of knowing, and we need to really put that forward in terms of, with great confidence, about the contribution that we can make from the African continent, and from that perspective, to use Mbembe's terms. So yes, I'll be very happy to contribute, and thank you very much for welcoming me into your space. And another thank you to Fatima, and I'm sending you a cyber hug.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have three. There is another one, but Adam has fallen off, so I think we all just go with three. So if possible then, so Ruxana, technology, education and research, and I think there's a lot to unpack in there. Andre, would you be happy to take a room on change, transformation, and systems, and that prosperity that thing? Thank you. And then Delene, Ubuntu, decolonization, heritage, and learning ecosystem, I suppose. So kind of really Ubuntu-based, heritage-based Africa. What does that mean in terms of an approach to learning and education? And perhaps if we can just pop hands up. So who is keen to join Ruxana in the technology discussion? Thanks, Murad. Just pop it up with a little icon. Thank you, Elizabeth, Shaylor. And by the way, you're not like forever committing yourself to a permanent role. It's just like a discussion still, guys. Okay. Zoe. Okay, anybody else? Has Mohammed fallen off? Because I thought that might interest him. Looks like. Okay, who is keen to have a discussion with Andre on change, transformation, systems, prosperity for education? So Aziz, can you just pop your hands up on the icon? Mohammed, where do you want to go? Okay, Sylvie, Sam. Okay. Oh, hi, Amy and Samira. Hope that you've heard enough to know what we're doing now. And then Ubuntu, decolonial perspectives, and learning ecosystems in education. Gillian. Okay. All right. Has anybody not chosen a particular room? Samira, where would you like to go? Okay. All right. So I'll open up breakaway rooms, and let's take about 20 minutes and go into those spaces. And the questions, they're guiding questions. So you can discuss whatever you would like in those rooms. but hopefully what we will come out with is, you know, what is energizing us, what is something that we're keen to explore together, what do we have in our hands that we can do, what might we need, and very, very importantly, what is the next practical step that we're keen to move to.